Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Dr. Zeke Emanuel with us today. We'll chat with him in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So before we get to Dr. Emanuel, let's talk about the big things of the week. Let's start with the Epstein files, because we're still dealing with the major dump of 3 million documents that came last week from the Department of Justice. But the thing that's really sticking in everyone's craw is the fact that so many of the survivors were not protected. Their names were not redacted. Their information, their personal information, photos were made public in these documents. And at the same time, the administration, the Department of Justice, protected the guilty. Protected the guilty. Just think about that for a second. They spent more time redacting the names of people who emailed with Jeffrey Epstein about little girls, young women, vile, disgusting comments. You see the comment, but you don't see the name. Why? Why were those names redacted? The law, the Epstein Transparency Act, which passed virtually unanimously a couple of months ago, did not stipulate that redactions were to protect the guilty. The only redactions that were called for in that law were to protect the survivors. So there are calls, obviously, for more transparency, more documents. There are apparently 3 million more files that the Justice Department is holding on to. The big question is, where's the accountability going to be? Where and when are we going to see justice for these brave women who have come forward to talk about the heinous crimes that were committed against them when they were underage, when they were minors? We still have Congressman Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, a Democrat and a Republican, fighting for the survivors, vowing to do whatever it takes to get that accountability and justice that they all seek and that we want for them because they deserve it so damn much. So this is something we just got to watch, and we can't forget about it. Donald Trump is great at throwing out all kinds of bombshells to distract everybody, you know, arresting Don Lemon, doing what he did last night, which is just unconscionable. He posted a video which depicted former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. It is the most disgusting, vile, racist thing he's done yet. Now, we've come to expect this sort of shit from Trump, but we also have to remind ourselves that whenever it gets too hot for him, whenever he's taken heat on Minneapolis, on the Epstein files, on his cratering approval rating, on the fact that people are upset about the economy, inflation continues to rise, grocery prices continue to rise. So he is widely criticized for all of that and is facing a lot of scrutiny over the people who got murdered, Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis, and over these Epstein files and what we have and haven't seen from our Justice Department in terms of accountability. Remember, they said there's no one to prosecute. There's no one to prosecute in this incredibly wide-reaching cabal of pedophiles and sex trafficking crimes. There's nobody but Ghislaine Maxwell who should be sitting in jail. Really? Nobody to prosecute? So we see the distractions, and I just don't think that people are going to forget. I don't think the survivors are going to give up. I don't think the rest of the country, I don't think MAGA is going to give up. We were all promised that these Epstein files would be released in full and that the perpetrators, the sex traffickers, the abusers of underage girls would be brought to justice. And that's what everyone is going to insist until it happens. The other thing I want to talk about very briefly is what I consider to be yet another one of his distractions, which is, his call for Republicans to take over the elections in 15 states. Now, don't get me wrong. Anytime Donald Trump talks about elections and what we need to do about them, we need to pay attention. I remember January 6th like everybody else does. I remember his refusal to concede and have a peaceful transfer of power. He's a guy who wants to stay in power. He wants to stay in that White House until he dies. Make no mistake about it. I get it. But just because Donald Trump says something that's outrageous doesn't mean we all have to spend 24 hours a day chasing our tails over it. We still have a constitution. We still have a democracy. We still have laws. And so just because he says something doesn't mean either he has the power to make it happen or that it will happen. Sure, it's a tell, just like before the 2020 election when he knew he was going to lose. He started talking about how rigged the election is going to be. Okay, well, he's doing the same thing now. He knows, and the Republicans know, that they're going to get their heads handed to them in November. So he's already starting. Okay, what is it, February? He's already talking about the rigged election that's going to happen in November. But it's only going to be rigged if Republicans lose. So he will only accept the results if he wins, if his party wins, if Republicans win, which is just absolute nonsense. It's absurd. But he's already spewing this incendiary rhetoric about the election being stolen. And so we definitely have to pay attention. But let's just be clear. He's very good at distraction. And so what happened when he dropped his bomb about nationalized elections is all the media was talking about for 2 days. Weren't talking about Minneapolis, weren't talking about Epstein, weren't talking about inflation and all the other things that are haunting him in this second term. So at the same time, we got to do whatever we can to stop him and ensure that there's a free and fair election in November. We also have to put things in perspective. There's things Donald Trump can do, and there's things he can't do. So I suggest we really focus on exactly what he can do and not obsess over the rhetoric and the distractions. For example, Steve Bannon, they're playing that clip all the time now. He says that, we're going to surround the polling sites with ICE agents. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's say it does. Democrats better start planning for that shit now. If you're a governor of a Democratic or a purple state, one of those 15 states he talks about, where you have key cities that are minority cities like Philadelphia, Detroit, you're a governor. You got the National Guard. Start readying and preparing to deploy your state's National Guard. Put the National Guard at these polling sites to protect voters. Now listen to this. Protect voters from the United States president and the United States government. Just let that sink in for a second. The redistricting, yeah, they're trying to steal, but the Supreme Court gave the green light for California. We have other states, Virginia, Maryland, that are also looking at redistricting, which would give Democrats the ability to expand its seats in the House. So a lot of this stuff, there's pushback, there's court rulings. But one thing that I really want my fellow Democrats to focus on is what happened a couple of weekends ago, where we flipped a Texas state Senate seat. What does that say? That says our democracy is alive and well. That says that no matter how pissed off Trump and the Republicans are, no matter how scared they are, no matter how they claim things are rigged, and no matter what they're trying to do to undermine our election system, we flipped a seat in Texas. So all we got to do is vote, people. Take what he says with a grain of salt, pay attention to it. Of course, let's prepare to combat it. But at the end of the day, you pick yourself up, you take everybody you know, and you go to the polling site and you vote. Because when you vote, we flip seats in Texas. All right, I'm going to get to my winners and losers. So my first loser, I got two today. My first loser is J.D. Vance, who, when asked by a reporter if the family of Alex Preddy deserves an apology, he smugly replied, "For what?" My other loser, back to Epstein, are his evil co-conspirators who have been redacted in the Epstein files, like this unnamed perverted piece of shit who emailed Epstein, quote, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." My winner, and this is a huge winner, is CNN's Caitlin Collins, who gave a masterclass in how to stay composed and resolute while the unhinged man-baby president threw a tantrum because she asked about Epstein survivors. And worse, the papa of patriarchy did what, I'm a man and I can't stand when other men do this to women and say, "Oh, honey, why don't you smile? Smile a little." She's not there to smile. She's the chief White House correspondent for CNN, and she's talking about women who, when they were minors, were brutally, at times, sexually molested, abused, raped, tortured. I'm sorry, Mr. President. I'm sorry, sir. Nobody should be smiling when they talk about these heinous crimes. All right, let's get to the weekly rant. So Donald Trump spoke yesterday at the National Prayer Breakfast. This is an annual invitation-only bipartisan gathering in D.C. for prayer, fellowship, and speeches focused on faith, and whose past speakers have included Mother Teresa and Bono. So you would think this would be a gathering of pious, God-fearing people who live by the Ten Commandments, cherish the Bible, and preach the teachings of Christ. But these are fake Christians, imposters who can justify sitting and laughing as the disgusting, incoherently rambling, racist pedophile protector-in-chief lied through his teeth about the 2020 election, called Democrats lunatics, called immigrants monsters, mocked Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and former Presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama, called Republican Congressman Thomas Massie a moron, and talked about hitting people. He also opined, "I don't know how a person of faith can vote for a Democrat." And he boasted that he brought religion back. "It's hotter than ever before," he said. But let's be crystal clear. There is nothing Christian about Donald Trump. In fact, he's more like the Antichrist. He's a serial sinning, corrupt, cruel monster who lacks even an ounce of kindness, compassion, and empathy, and who relishes inflicting pain and suffering on the weak and needy. He's someone who late last night, as I mentioned before, during Black History Month, posted a video of Michelle and Barack Obama as monkeys. So yeah, shame the fuck on him and on all of those despicable religious hypocrites who enable and embolden this heretic and call him the chosen one. All right, let's get to Dr. Zeke Emanuel. He is a vice provost and professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also a bioethicist, health policy expert, and oncologist, and was one of the architects of the Affordable Care Act. He is a regular guest on CNN and MS Now, and frequently contributes to the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and The Atlantic. He's an author whose new book is Eat Your Ice Cream: 6 Simple Rules for a Long and Healthy Life. Dr. Emanuel, welcome into the back room.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk about your book. I love the title. It's called Eat Your Ice Cream: 6 Simple Rules for a Long and Healthy Life. What inspired you to write Eat Your Ice Cream now?
3 things came together. The first is I'm a doctor, and lots of people are asking for advice. What do you think of this diet? What about this supplement? What about this exercise? What should I do because I don't sleep? That's probably increasingly the most common one. And I was like, I should put it all together. And then a few years ago, Ariana Huffington at a conference asked me, well, why don't they teach more wellness in medical school and have doctors do more for patients with wellness? And it's a totally legitimate question. And I said, well, partially there are 6 things to be done. They're not that complicated. Wasn't a very satisfying answer, but the 6 things were there. A long time ago, I had them. And then I would say the last thing was exactly 2 years ago, someone gave me Peter Attia's book. I finished teaching. It was December. The finals hadn't come in, so I had no grading to do. And I sat down and read it, and it made me pissed off beyond belief. And so I sat down and I just, like author's report, it just gushed out of me. Yes, the 35,000 words of draft one gushed out of me. And then I put it away. And then basically Kara Swisher and Adam Grant we were having dinner one day and they said, "Oh, you can't put that away. It's such an important book." And they began helping me, here's my agent, here's my book publisher, here's my PR person, and really, really encouraging me. And that got me over the hump.
Mm-hmm. Well, the title "Eat Your Ice Cream" feels downright rebellious in today's
exactly
wellness in today's wellness culture. So, for a guy like me, are you giving me permission to do a pint at night, like I
not a pint, not a pint, but I am giving you permission to be joyful and don't wellness as self-denial is not going to last, and it's not the way we should be. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is willpower easily fatigues. You cannot do these things. You cannot do decades and decades of wellness activities, which is what you're going to have to do based on willpower. You'll just exhaust your willpower. We know it fatigues. We've got a lot of good evidence that if you try to do things by willpower, it ends, which is why all those New Year's resolutions are kaput by February. The second thing is, we're on this planet for 75, 85, 90 years, whatever it is. Who wants to live a monastic life? You've got to enjoy life. Life has to be fun. You have to have new experiences. You have to do things that you find pleasurable. And that is the heart of the book, the major philosophy in the book. Don't be extreme. Don't go, okay, you say I can eat ice cream every night, I'm going to have a pint. No, but, a scoop of ice cream. I know plenty of people. I got a neighbor across the street. He has a nightcap every night at 9 o'clock, and it's not an alcoholic beverage. It's his ice cream. Okay, that's fine.
So that's willpower.
And if you don't like one scoop a night, you can say have 2 scoops at the end of a week.
All right. I'll take that into consideration, staring at my pint of Ben & Jerry's. So the title really is about enjoying life and even indulgences, as you just spoke about. And how do we really, you mentioned willpower, but how do we really balance overall pleasure and health in a safe, long-term way?
Well, that's really what the book is about. Here is the way to do that balancing. So, take diet. I list things that you have to stop doing. Stop drinking sugary beverages, particularly sodas, lots of calories, no nutritional benefit. Stop with the ultra-processed snacks, especially because we're now on average 500 calories a day people consume of packaged cakes and muffins and cookies and pretzels. And then you've got to do positive things. You've got to eat fermented foods for the microbiome. You've got to eat more fiber as a prebiotic to cultivate the microbiome. And similarly for exercise, do the right exercise, but they don't consume your life. You have to make them habits that you enjoy. And if you do them in moderation, you will be able to live a good and long life. And the most important one, and this is sort of part of the book, is one that no calories, no different. It's engage with people, have friends, talk to friends, talk to your neighbor, go to a restaurant, sit at the bar and talk to someone there, talk to someone in the airplane seat sitting next to you when you're flying around. All of these, that doesn't take any stress. It doesn't take lots of calories or anything. It's a way of enjoying yourself. And really, it turns out that's really, really positive for your physical body, talking to people. And so you actually decrease your inflammation, decrease your stress hormones, improve the reward hormone dopamine in your brain. So this really, the idea, if we only focus on food, you're worried about it running away. But as part of an overall package, that's the key item.
Mm-hmm. So eat your ice cream is one of the 6 simple rules. Let's talk a little. You just hit on another one. Talk to people, and you suggest that loneliness and isolation versus obesity and inactivity. Loneliness and isolation could be worse.
Yes.
So Mingling, right? You touched on that. Mingling.
Yeah.
What is the importance of literal mingling? And I want to know your go-to chit-chat mingle line.
So there are two types of really social interactions that we have. One are strong ones. You have close ties to family, close ties to friends, often friends you made in college because, that's a perfect time for having deep conversations, shooting the shit, letting someone know your, aspirations, your loves, your hates, your fears. And that's really what bonds people.
Mm-hmm.
But there are what are called weak social interactions where we might not know anything about the person. We happen to just overlap. And what we can do is talk. And often we go through those social interactions, we say nothing, or we say something very, very minimal. But, if I'm sitting next to someone, I was just on a plane recently to Boston, and a woman was sitting next to me, and I said, "So you're going to Boston for business, or is that home?" And she said, "It's home." So I said, really complicated question. Next complicated question. Where do you live? "Oh, I live in Gloucester." I said, "What do you do there?" And then she began telling me about the fact that about 5 or 7 years ago, she began planting public spaces that had been left barren with flowers. She got some money from the gardening club and money from some of the businesses. And over the years, more people joined the gardening club to do it. They plant more areas. And now Gloucester is actually a mecca for people in the spring to drive through to see all the flower arrangements. It's fascinating. Who knew? It was like very, very interesting. Sometimes.
What you just hit on is something that I realized a long time ago, which is most people really do love to talk about themselves and the things they do. But a lot of people are terrified of mingling. They're terrified to do what you did on the plane or at a cocktail party. But really, if you can I have found if you just sort of unlock them by asking them about themselves, it's like it starts the conversation.
It's magic. 100%. And that you've just pointed out two of the things that we think keep us back from doing that, and both of them are wrong. One is that the other person will, not want to talk to us, really turn us off, etc. And that turns out, as you point out, most people actually want to engage. They are like you, hesitant, fearful, not open to initiating. So they're not initiators. And my father, who was it sounds like he's very much like you, he would talk to anyone all the time. He would embarrass his children with that. But he used to say, "Be an initiator. Just start and you'll see where it goes. It'll go farther than you think." And the second thing is we often think we're not going to learn anything. It's going to be boring. They're going to think it's boring. They're going to think I'm a fool or intrusive or something. And that is always wrong. Almost always people find it more interesting, learn something, and are happier at the end. And one of the interesting things is, turns out that even if you're an introvert, you are happy acting extrovert. So there's this professor at the University of Chicago, Nick Epley, who did these series of studies of having people who are commuting in on the train or the bus, and 1 week, just do your normal thing, and he assesses their happiness and the satisfaction. And the next week, he says, "All right, on this ride, you have to talk to at least one stranger and find out something about them." Turns out people like the commute where they're talking to a stranger way more. And again, whether they're extroverted or introverted. And so we have to understand people like talking to us. And then you're doing such a good, virtuous thing. I said, talking to a stranger is a virtuous act. It's good for you. It improves your physiology. It improves your happiness. It's good for them. So you're giving them a gift. They don't know how to initiate, but they get pleasure out of talking to you too. So you're doing an act of kindness to someone else.
Yeah. By the way, embarrassing your children, especially when they're teenagers, is really the point of it all.
I think that was my dad's philosophy too.
Yeah. Here's my favorite. Don't be a schmuck. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's like, we take a lot of, life is risky. You take risks all the time, no matter what you do. Just walking down the street has risks. Probably the most dangerous thing most of us do on a regular basis is turn the ignition key in a car. A lifetime risk of dying in a car accident in the United States is about 1 in 100. Pretty risky, actually. So I say, my crude philosophy is, well, if something is more risky than that, unless it has really great benefits, it's too risky. If something is less risky than that, go for it. And you have to think about what you're doing on a regular basis. So just, we all know, don't smoke, bad idea, no upsides, only downsides. Vaping, yeah, it's not as bad as smoking as far as we can tell, but it ain't healthy. So don't do that. Alcohol's another one where it's a little more complicated because there are trade-offs. Yes, physically, it's bad for the liver, increases your risk of getting serious cancers, disrupts your sleep, leads to more cognitive decline. But it also can be a great lubricant for the social interaction we were just talking about.
But if you're on a train, and you're drunk and you say, "Hey, where are you from?" You might not get the same reaction, though.
Exactly, that is true. Yeah, you can't be hitting on people.
Yeah.
So there are various things, and when I was researching the book, I was sort of, what's the stupidest thing someone could do? What's the riskiest thing with no benefit? And I said, it's got to be base jumping. Jumping off a mountain, the Michelin squirrel suit, you've got no propeller, you've got no parachute, you're really at the whim of the wind. And it turns out the chance of dying each time you jump is 1 in 2,700. And if you read the sort of chat between these base jumpers, they almost all expect to die at some point. Now, that is really crazy. But it also turns out base jumping is not the riskiest thing to do. The riskiest thing you can do is climb Mount Everest. Now, you have to pay, if you're not a mountaineer, you have to pay $100,000, $150,000 to climb. And it turns out that the chance of dying in one ascent is 1 in 100. And the chance, if you're over 59, which I am, it's 1 in 25. That is real. That's just the dumbest thing I could imagine. So
I'm with you.
There you go.
Okay, the next one that I'll talk about, and then we'll leave the rest for people who actually buy the book. Sleep like a baby. So why is sleep so important, and how much should we be getting every night?
I used to have a debate partner in high school. He was a brilliant guy, went to Yale, and just brilliant guy. And he used to always complain to me. He's like, I'm wasting all this time sleeping. I got to sleep less and get more work done. And, that is the dumbest attitude you can have. And the reason it's wrong is that we sleep. Sleep itself is the proof that you have to sleep. Because just imagine, you're sleeping, you're unconscious, you can't defend yourself for a third of the day. You are a predator's dream, right? I just come across you, chomp, 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 I eat you up and I have a great meal. So that we still sleep despite being vulnerable to all sorts of predators tells you sleep is vitally important. Now, we don't have a full theory of why sleep is important, but we have good reasons. First of all, it allows the brain to take out the garbage, right? Like cities, like every household, the brain also collects garbage. That is stuff that is used up that needs to be ejected or it will become toxic. And sleep is the moment that happens. 2, it allows rejuvenation of proteins, repair of DNA, cells, and all sorts of things. So, you stretch your muscles, you work, you run really hard or bike really hard and your muscles are all strained, that they have a chance to repair, or the bones where the tendons go in are have microfractures. They get to be repaired during sleep. Also, we know that our short-term memory stored here between, literally right next to the ears, goes to the front of our heads, to the frontal cortex, and becomes long-term memories. And again, that happens with sleep. So if you don't have sleep and then you say, well, I'm really forgetful, that's why, because you haven't given yourself enough time to form the long-term memories. How much do we need? Well, like most things in nature, there's a bell-shaped curve. There are some people who are genetically short sleepers. They can get away with 4 hours. There are some people who turn out to be long sleepers. They need more than 10 or 11 hours. The vast majority of us are between 7 and 9. You figure out how much you need. Now, not everyone's the same. So, my wife and I, she sleeps about 45 minutes to an hour per night longer than I do. I tend to almost always get up before she does. And that's, pretty common. She also can't nap, and I can nap.
Is it unhealthy to not get 7 to 9? Like I usually get 6. Is that not good for my health?
That may be the amount you need. Again, it's a bell-shaped distribution, and it's hard to tell. The best way of doing that and assessing yourself is kill the clock and do it on days where you don't have to be somewhere in the morning, and don't set a clock. Don't have an indicator of the time and get it, and find out how long you sleep. And after 2 weeks of that, you will figure out that, well, it's really 6 hours and 45 minutes plus or minus a few. That's what I need. And you may be one of those 6-hour people. But, I know that I'm about a 7:15, 7:30, 7 hours and 15 minutes, 7 hour and 30-minute sleeper.
How do your rules differ for people at very different life stages? So people in their 20s versus people in their 70s, are the same principles equally applicable?
You're 100% right. The same principles are applicable, but there are going to be subtle differences. As we get older, there are certain things that change. One of them is we lose muscle mass after 55 or so, and we lose about 6 to 8% of our muscle mass every decade. So you really have to consciously do a lot of strength training to keep the muscle mass up. You have to eat more protein, about 20% more protein per day. So if normally people eat 1 gram per 1 kilogram of protein, you older need 1.2 grams per kilogram. But I should say protein is one of those things. It's advertised everywhere. I just went by a Dunkin' Donuts earlier today, and they got this big sign in the window, protein, 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 with a cup of something. And it's like, well, that's absurd. Protein in my coffee, that is the dumbest thing. Almost all Americans get enough protein. Protein deficiency is not our problem, except to older people where they, or if you've got cancer, and you've got what's called cachexia, you lose weight because of the cancer. But almost, if you're average American, you're getting enough protein. What you're not getting enough of is fiber. Fruits and vegetables, we don't eat enough of them, and you need to eat more fiber in your body. It's good for the microbiome, which is so essential. So I would say that the answer is, as you grow older, there are other things you need to do. Like, if you retire at 65. You have to think about what are the activities that you're going to do to keep your mind mentally sharp, to make sure you have the social interaction, to make sure you're actually using your brain, because the brain is like muscles. Use it or lose it. If you don't use it, you are going to have it deteriorate. So you have to actually consciously, all right, what's the new hobby I'm taking up, or what's the activity? I talked to Walter Isaacson, a famous journalist and author of all these biographies like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. And I said, so Walter, what's the hobby you're doing now? And he says, well, I'm learning French. I've been learning French for 4 years because I'm doing a book on Marie Curie. Well, that's a fabulous hobby. Uses the brain, musculature, because you pronounce words differently. So it's really, the visual cortex also. It's one of the great hobbies.
So a burning question, when it comes to age, are you a bigger schmuck at 20 or 70?
It really depends on how you lead your life.
Right.
If you're 70 years old and you retire and you think you're going to laze yourself at a beach with the pina coladas, that's a pretty schmucky move. And as I quote Ben Franklin in the book, that even Ben Franklin knew that was a schmucky move. And if you're at 20, you're going to school, so you're exercising your brain, you're getting a lot more connections, you exercise regularly, you eat nutritiously. In general, younger people have worse judgment because the frontal cortex, where that sort of judgment, weighing the risk, the executive function lives, is not fully developed until the early 20s or mid 20s. But one of the beauties of human beings is we're all a little different. And there are lots of 20-year-olds I've met who are in my classes who are incredible, and they're doing everything right, and it's already part of their habits. And there are plenty of older people I've met who are doing it great too. And there are some people at both ages I've met, and you like scratch your head. That's just going to shorten your life. You claim to care about life, but you're not doing things that you really care about.
Yeah. You dedicate this book to your late father, who died at 92. There's a lot of things he did and didn't do that may surprise people who strive to live a long life. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So my dad, he was an immigrant to America. He was born in what was then Palestine, went to medical school in Switzerland, and came to America to get training. He was an inveterate extrovert. So he talked to everyone all the time. And people loved him. At his memorial service. There were more than 400 people, ex-patients, ex-colleagues, nurses, and doctors who worked with him. He loved people, and he would interact with people. Social, he was like check plus. But exercise, my dad, I don't think ever stepped foot in the gym. He would think it was a waste of money. He was a very frugal guy. We call him cheapskate. But everyone called him Speedy. He was zip. He would go into the hospital. He'd zip from one patient to the next patient, and people would have to run after him. His nurse would have to run after him to make sure she got all the orders down. And we as kids would on the weekends go with him, and we'd have to trudge after him. But that's how he got his exercise. He would walk inveterately and fast, but he never jogged. He never swam laps. He never rode a bike for a stationary bike at home. He would think that was crazy. And he had, he's lucky he had a wife who was really into food and being careful about food, even in the 1960s. So my mom, in the 1960s, we would have a salad every night at dinner to make sure we had enough vegetables, right? My mom did not use a lot of salt or a lot of sugar. Now, my dad wasn't so good about the sugar, but on the salt, we had no extra salt, no added salt in our house, to make sure that we weren't doing bad stuff. We didn't have a lot of meat. We were, had a fair amount of vegetarian because they lived in Israel when I was born, and there wasn't a lot of meat. So she got very good at cooking vegetarian meals. So my dad, he ate well because he had a wife who cooked very well for him in those days. He was also an incredibly hard worker who, loved his work, loved his patients, loved interacting with his patients. And that kept him healthy and young for a very long time.
How much does genes and DNA play a role in how long people are going to live today?
Well, there's a new study out of the Weizmann Institute in Israel, literally 2 weeks ago. And they said, so traditionally, the number had been somewhere around 25 to 30%. Everyone used to say there's a very nice chart from the National Academy of Medicine that says 30% is genetics. And it turns out this study looked much more rigorously, excluding people who had died of accidents or an infection, and looked for the underlying cause of the organs failing. And they say 55% of longevity is gene related. 45% is more environment and behavior. And importantly, when you look at things like heart disease or Alzheimer's, the percent of gene is higher. If you look at cancer, that's more an environmental situation. Now, there are some genetically predisposed, like BRCA1 for breast cancer. But in general, cancer is the environment affecting the DNA, random mutations, whether it's from sunlight or toxins like benzene, where people develop from the environment. So cancer tends to be more environmental cause of early death. So that's the difference. 50%. You control half of it is your behaviors. That's a big percentage. You can really affect your longevity.
But people with less income or less access to care, I would imagine that's a significant factor in all this too.
It's less the care, it's more the income, so that they have the time to exercise. They have the money to eat well and nutritious food. We know one of the attractions of ultra processed foods is that they're lower cost because a lot of the ingredients are subsidized, as opposed to fruits and vegetables where there's very little subsidies of them. And so those are things which, inhibit them. And I wrote this book with the idea that, this shouldn't just appeal to people who have deep pockets. You have to, first of all, it doesn't cost you to have a friend. What costs you is to be there with the person, to spend time with them. Exercise, right? Okay, so you can't afford to be a member of a tennis club, or you can't afford a gym membership. You can still walk, you can hike, you can run for very minimal to no cost. There are many things you can do to exercise without a lot of cost. And I try to put into the book guidelines that can be done for minimal activity. And then there are lots of things people waste their money on. They buy a lot of supplements, or they buy, instead of eating fruits and vegetables, they buy prebiotics, or they will buy sleeping medications and stuff. That's all wasted money.
Yeah.
And part of what this book should do is actually save you money.
No, those are all very good points. But I think sometimes people use things like that as an excuse, and you're pointing out that it's all in the head. So everybody gets up, they go to work every day, they spend their whole lives working, they sit at their desks and dream of retirement. You're kind of bursting that bubble a little bit. Tell us about that.
Yes. One of the big problems what's one of the several of the advantages of working? No one likes the commute. I've never met anyone who says, "Oh, I love that commute into work." But work has a lot of advantages. First of all, for many people, work is a key part of their social network. Mm-hmm. I had a colleague at the University of Pennsylvania who retired a year ago, and he saw me on one of these shows, and he said, I love your advice, but one of my big problems is when I retired, I lost my social network, because the people I would go out to dinner with, or we would go play tennis, they were all at work. And when I retired, really stopped. So you have to worry about that. The second thing is, work has a lot of challenges, mental challenges. You're trying to figure out something. You're trying to solve a puzzle. You're trying to make sales and figure out what the best way is. Those mental challenges, make brain connections, keep your brain going for a long time. There's also the schedule. You've got to get up. You actually have to keep a schedule, which is very good for people for keeping sleeping and the hours. And there's also people are relying on you, and that expectation drives a lot of people. And when you retire, a lot of that goes away. And one of the things we see is that for a lot of people, there is a rapid decline in cognitive functioning and an increase in problems with the brain. You become more forgetful. And so if, we're all going to end up retiring, one of the things is to postpone it, and not for financial reasons. I'm talking about mental reasons, cognitive reasons. But the other thing is, you have to have a plan. And it's not just, do I have enough money? But the plan has to be, all right, what are the hobbies I'm going to do? How am I going to have that social connection with people? How am I scheduling lunch? I was driving with someone who I hadn't seen in many years. And he said, you and I should be better friends. We should go out more regularly for dinner. And I was like, wow, that's a good idea. And he said, listen, I'll come down to Philadelphia. Occasionally you'll come up to, he lives in New Jersey, outside New York. You'll come up here. It seemed like a perfect idea. And neither of us were retired, but we had a lot in common, we're, kind of interested in many of the same things, both politically active, and it's like, oh, that's a great idea. So you got to plan retirement, and not just for the money reasons, but for the mental, cognitive reasons.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably, when they envision retirement, it's like they see Archie Bunker, sitting on like a slug on a chair watching TV and relaxing. And I think your point, the point of your book is, it may seem like relaxing, but it's probably contributing to a very poor health condition.
Yes. And I think that you're exactly right. One of the things we know, we've looked at this actually in our data, of how people spend their time post-retirement. And a lot of people, 40 hours a week goes down, 40 hours in front of the TV goes up. And TV is a very passive, mentally, physically passive activity. It is one of the more deadly things.
Let's talk about the wellness industrial complex and why you're not a fan.
Yeah, so this is a moment. It's more than a moment. It's decades of everyone talking about wellness and telling you what to do. And part of what bothers me about that, there are many things that bother me about it. One of them is they want to make wellness an obsession. You should really focus your life on it. No, you should not. It should become practices that sort of fade into your background so you can focus on the things that matter. Two, they often make it very complicated. You got to do this precisely right, or count this number of grams of protein, or this. And it's like, no. Then they also make it simple. It's just eating well, exercising, sleep. No, social interactions are important. Calculating your risk so that you don't do excessively risky things are important. But maybe the most important problem of this wellness industrial complex is all of those people have conflicts of interest. They're all selling you something, whether it's AG1 or this test that is supposed to make you better, or, come to my clinic and I'll, put you on a treadmill and blah, blah, blah. Or, you can have a private appointment with me and I'll craft a personalized exercise regimen for you. Baloney. It's all, they're just making money on you. I'm not selling anything. Nope. No supplement, no magic potion, no exercise routine, no test, no nothing. I'm just trying to give you what the scientific literature says is the right thing to do. And then you figure out how to put it in your life and to build a life so that you can, exercise, eat, talk to people, figure out how to do that.
If somebody's kind of lost and they're listening to this and they're like, I want to do something, because right now I do nothing. And I only got time and the patience for one thing. What would you suggest somebody wakes up tomorrow and starts doing in a way to change their life, to be happy and to live longer?
I'll give you three. They can choose from three things. The first thing is dedicate yourself to having friends, or connecting with people who you're friendly with. People are always shocked when I say, I talk to both my brothers every week, and I talk to them, 3 or 4 times a week. What? Are you kidding? How can you? And I've got other very close friends who don't happen to live in the same city, and every Sunday, it doesn't work out to be every Sunday, but it certainly works out to be almost every other Sunday, we have a couple over for dinner together. Be social. Mm-hmm. It's good for you, really good for you. The second thing I would say is, start walking, all right? And then graduate to jogging, and then graduate to running. Or if you don't like that, get on a bicycle and ride a few miles on the bike. You ride 5 miles on the bike, you'll get a good workout. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like any of that, then focus in on changing your diet 1 meal at a time. You got 21 meals a week. Start by changing 1 meal. All right, tomorrow I'm going to have breakfast. It's going to be berries with yogurt, with granola, and hemp hearts. Perfect meal, got everything you need, the fiber, the protein, the dairy, good fats in there. Great. All right. You're starting, and then the next week, add another meal out of the 21 that you're going to change. And you'll be amazed. By the end of the year, you'll have a lot of good meals.
Well, when I first started eating yogurt, which wasn't that long ago, I got dizzy when I went to the supermarket because there's like 400 types of yogurt. And it's like there's Greek yogurt, there's low-fat yogurt, there's vanilla yogurt, there's flavored yogurt. And then you start looking at the ingredients and the nutritional information, and it's like, ooh, these yogurts are not all the same. What's the best yogurt for people to eat? And what are the misconceptions about yogurt and low
Yeah.
fat, non-fat, all this fat?
Ignore the fat. If you like full fat, go for it. You like low fat, go for it. The data, very clear data, no difference. Yes, the US government for decades pushed low fat, low fat, low fat, but the studies, the research says the difference for human health between low fat and low fat and whole milk dairy, no difference. So you like the full fat, that's fine. Second, the fruit and all that stuff just adds calories. It's sugar. Don't do that. Go to the plain and stick to the plain. You like Greek? Good. You like regular yogurt? You don't like the thickness of the Greek? Also good. That mainly is the difference of the amount of protein that's in there, and the amount of protein per scoop you'll get. The good thing about yogurt is it's high in protein to begin with. The Greek is even more proteinaceous, but it's a matter of taste. Add it and get the important thing is the one you're going to stick to and enjoy. Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. Someone I gave Kara Swisher some honey I made. I just began getting honey last week, and it was like, oh, she loves it. She adds it to her kefir and yogurt in the morning. It's like, great. That's how you like it? All right. If you're going to eat the yogurt and the kefir that way, fabulous.
Okay. I think you just made a lot of people happy. Let's talk about the state of our healthcare in this country. And how would you characterize that state of American healthcare now that we are over 1 year into Trump's second term and under the leadership, and it pains me every time I say this, of HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr.?
Well, I would say the healthcare system is pretty much a disaster. It's really expensive. Everyone's frustrated by it. Not everyone has insurance. Even people with insurance are afraid to use the healthcare system because they're going to get a bill that they can't afford.
Right.
That is not a place for us to be. And that's pretty terrible. We need to fix it. It is true Trump and RFK Jr. didn't cause the problem, but they are not solving the problem. When it comes to vaccines, RFK Jr. is terrible. He's just wrong on everything he says about vaccines. And there's no evidence for, I think, almost any of the statements he makes when it comes to vaccines. We need to go back to the old system. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be really hard because he's empowering people to say, I'm going to decide whether the vaccine's a good or bad thing. Well, most people have no ability to do that. And that's why we have experts on that. When it comes to the diet and his dietary guidelines, he's actually done some good stuff. Okay, he's like, ultra-processed foods, we got too much of it. Sugar, too much, got to reduce sugar. Salt, reduce the salt. Plant proteins are fine, eat more of them. Eat more fiber is in his. He wants people to bring back home economics in school so people learn how to cook. All good things. The place he goes wrong on the diet, in my opinion, is too much emphasis on beef and red meat and protein. No, we know that beef is associated with high saturated fats, which causes high heart disease, high risk of stroke, and early mortality. That is not going to be a good thing. And a lot of the people who advise him have conflicts of interest from the Cattlemen Beef Association. He's also against seed oils like canola oil or sunflower oil. Wrong. Those are perfectly fine. The best oil for you is olive oil, but olive oil is very expensive. And if you can't afford it, and many people in America cannot afford it, canola oil or corn oil or sunflower oil is perfectly fine. So I would say those are the heavy emphasis on protein, especially beef and red meat, and the seed oils, it's just wrong. Again, no ifs, ands, or buts. And so I think, the vaccines, that many Americans are going to die because of the vaccine
Is that why
problems.
is that why we have a measles outbreak now?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And not just measles. You're seeing upticks of other diseases that were, I don't know if wiped out but we had hardly any cases, diphtheria, other things. And a lot of experts are waiting on rubella, which is a terrible disease because it affects the developing fetus. We're going to have trouble. And there's just no two ways about it. Unfortunately, the people who experienced it, were parents in the 50s, are dying off. But they can tell you, summer was their nightmare season, not because kids were out of school, but because it was polio season, and they were just fearful the kid might get polio, end up paralyzed, or even worse, in an iron lung. And you got people in the government that RFK Jr. is appointed saying, well, maybe we don't need the polio vaccine anymore. Oh, really? So you want more polio to come back? Genius.
Well, it'll keep the measles company, I guess.
Yeah.
I asked this question facetiously. Yesterday, RFK Jr. said that the keto diet cures schizophrenia. I assume he's wrong.
I don't know any data that keto diet is good for schizophrenia. It is good for diabetes. The problem with the keto diet is most people cannot survive on it. You can't live for decades on it. Now, there are some people who have, a lot of willpower, and they sort of get themselves to do the diet. But, this keto diet isn't new. We've known about the keto diet for decades and decades and decades. It's just that most people can't, they just can't survive on it. And so they flip back. And the problem with that is then you get this cycle of you lose weight and then you gain weight, and you lose weight and gain weight. And that is even worse for you than just stable but high weight. And that is the problem of something like the keto diet, that people end up cycling a lot. Anyway, RFK Jr., I think once at a Senate hearing said, you shouldn't get health advice from me. He's 100% right.
He certainly was. This is the thing that really scares me in all seriousness. When we see the funding cuts and the organizational changes that affected the federal government's ability to respond to public health, like what happens if we are faced with another pandemic, another COVID-like situation? I don't have faith in this particular administration and the agencies that have been gutted to do what we received last time.
I think you're 100% right. And I think it doesn't even have to be a pandemic. We have stopped monitoring for many illnesses, so the outbreaks will be bigger before people notice, and that can be a huge problem. We don't have people skilled at analyzing the data and figuring out whether this is baseline or this is a serious threat. So the ability to say, yeah, we really need to activate the system is gone. And the notion of the fact that we're not cooperating with other countries, that we've pulled back, so they're not going to feed us data and we're not going to have our own data, is terrifying. And I think the hollowing out of the government, and again, HHS is just one agency, but we've seen massive effects. The FDA is really in serious trouble. Lots of people have been forced out. The people who remain are demoralized because they think decisions are being made for political reasons, not for scientific reasons. You're just not getting the kind of professional, I care about the country action that we used to get. And it's a real problem. Can bureaucracies be problematic? Can they slow things up when they should be going faster? 100%. But the solution isn't, let's just get rid of all these people, because that just means things slow up. And, you're hearing lots of complaints about how slow things are at the FDA, how politicized things are. That's a disaster, both at the CDC, the FDA, and NIH.
Yeah, it is terrifying.
And you know what the problem is, Andy, is the big impact of this is not going to be noticed for several years. And then it's hard for the public to connect the dots. Well, the slashing by Doge in 2025 led to the undermining of this agency, which led to the possibility that this outbreak was undetected or this foodborne illness didn't get noticed. That will be very hard for the public to connect and for people to explain. And then they say, well, the next administration could have just hired people. Well, just imagine who's going to come back and work for an organization that just slashes people with, willy-nilly, with no game plan, no strategic plan. No one's going to entrust their career to that kind of employer.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And it's a reality that we're going to face, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah.
Let's wrap up with a quick lightning round.
Oh, God.
Give me your favorite ice cream flavor and brand.
There's Dolcezza in Washington, D.C. Made me a chocolate hazelnut with the hazelnuts from Piedmont, Italy. Fabulous. Fabulous.
All right. Exercise that you secretly hate but do anyway.
Secretly, I'm not a big weightlifter. I think when I was swimming, it just turned me off. But you have to do it. I need more muscle strengthening up atop. I have a lot of it in my legs because I bicycle a lot and pretty intensely. But my shoulders and stuff, not so much. So that's weightlifting.
One habit you wish you started 20 years earlier.
Yoga. Really, I came to yoga about 20 years ago, and I wish I had yoga long time.
Are we talking goat yoga, hot yoga? What kind of yoga? Just basic yoga?
Just basic yoga. I don't know any of the differences.
You don't have like a little goat climbing on you when you do it? That's like really popular now.
Well, the main thing I do it is to keep my legs, my hamstrings, my quads, my hip flexors, my glutes, all of those flexible, and really, really, really important. I mean, my flexibility and balance, I'm getting up there in the years, I think is pretty good. I'm not a, 6-year-old girl in ballet class, but I'm getting good.
All right. Beatles versus Stones.
Oh, well, I'll tell you a secret. I just did a VO2 max because I wanted to see what my real VO2 max was. And I asked the guy, can you put the Stones on?
All right. Wow. There you go, folks.
I did pretty damn well.
What series are you streaming or binging right now?
So I am not a big TV watcher. I left my house at age 18, and I really don't do a lot of TV. But my wife and I have gotten into Slow Horses.
I'm watching that right now. Oh, it's so good.
Exactly. It's so good. And we love the sort of British mysteries. So
that's a really great show. I'm really happy you said that.
Yeah.
All right. Here's some really important final questions. Who is the smartest Emanuel brother?
Let's just say I did the best in school. Ari is obviously a genius at business. Everyone discounted almost every move he's ever made. Everyone said, "Oh, no." Turns out to be brilliant. He's a guy who 20 years ago told me, it's all going to be live entertainment. And he was so brilliantly right. He's clearly the most successful of the Emanuel brothers. And Ram is I think no politician today is as smart about the politics, but also really understands how to get things done. You really have to think back to people like LBJ and stuff for figuring out, well, this is how we have to put together a coalition. He's also, I think, my own personal opinion is he's the best debater of the politics. You put him on a stage with all the, when we're going to have a candidate debate, he's going to be the best. He's just great at that kind of give and take and making persuasive arguments in a short period of time.
Who's the funniest brother?
I have no idea. Not a quality we measure.
Yeah. And the best looking. Who's the best looking brother?
I'm not getting into that. I'm already in the shit house. Come on, man.
All right. So back to Rom for a second. People say he's going to run for president. You are one of the chief architects of Obamacare. If he becomes president, are you and him going to get together and create Romcare and fix this freaking problem in our country today?
Well, let me be honest. The book I'm working on now, after Eat Your Ice Cream, is a book about why the United States has had such a bad healthcare system, why we can't get universal coverage at reasonable cost with consistent high quality and people being satisfied with the system. It's deeper than, we need to add a program. We need to actually change the whole structure. And I think Americans are getting so pissed off at the system. The dissatisfaction is high enough to have people shoot healthcare executives. We need a comprehensive reform. And the problem is no one's laid it out. Now, I think I've made the diagnosis of where the defects are. I think I have the outlines of a plan. I'm working on fleshing it out literally right now. I just had a meeting today with my team, and I said, March 1st, I'm starting to write that chapter on what the plan is going to be. So we're going to really be focusing on that.
Drop it here. Let's break some news.
All right. I think either in 2028 or certainly by 2032, we're definitely going to need a comprehensive reform plan.
Dr. Emanuel, thanks for coming on. This was a really insightful conversation, and congrats on the book. Again, it's Eat Your Ice Cream, 6 Simple Rules for a Long and Healthy Life. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. This has been terrific.
And I will now go eat some ice cream.
All right.
Without the guilt.
And what is your flavor?
I'm vanilla and chocolate. I'm old school.
Old school. That's great.
That's it. Don't need anything more.
Enjoy it, man. Take care.
Always do.
Bye.
This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.